What is your major malfunction? Didn't Mommy and Daddy show you enough attention when you were a child?
Let's play this backwards and see if it gets any better.
Let's get down to business. What do you say?
Show me the money!
Always be closing. Always be closing.
You're now listening to Boots to Business with Daniel Hrabowski.
All right, everybody, welcome to Boots to Business. My name is Daniel Hrabowski. You can listen to us every Sunday on WFLA Orlando from 5 to 6 p.m. On your dial, that's going to be 93.1, 94.1, 107.7. You can find us online at the socials, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or you can go to www.boots-to-business.com. First part of today's show is going to be brought to you by Insurance Claims HQ. They're powered by the Harris Shannara trial attorneys, and their commitment is to help make you whole again after a disaster. Call 844-252-4684. Visit them at insuranceclaimhq.com. In studio with me today, as always, is Melissa Jacob from Striking Brand. Hi, Melissa.
Hello, hello.
And our guest today is Mark Goldwich, who is the owner of Gold Star Adjusters and a nonprofit for veterans called Veterans Claim Victory, correct?
That's it.
Got it. Okay, so Mark, nice. Thank you for coming in. How are you today?
Oh, thank you for having me, Daniel. Doing very well.
Good. So just to give everybody a little bit of background, so Mark and I met officially for the first time in Philadelphia a couple months ago, and immediately I wanted to have him on the show because obviously with the show being what it is about veterans, and we got to sit and talk quite a bit about the nonprofit that he runs. I'm going to let him kind of jump in here in a second and explain kind of more what that looks like. But I think our industry needs to get better at doing things like this because there are a lot of veterans coming out of the service that have no idea what avenues are available to them. And if I know when I got out, if somebody would have said, well, you can go in the construction industry or insurance world or anything like that, I would have been like, nah, it's fine. I'm going to go do something else because there's not enough education in that space, right? And I think that's really where Mark's nonprofit is focusing on, is prepping these guys to kind of come into our world and be effective in that world. So give us the cliff note, or actually give us a good rundown of one, how you got into that space, like what made you decide you wanted to do that, and then secondly, you know, is there that niche person? Is there somebody specifically when you're looking at veterans, or is it kind of a blanket, anybody coming out of the service, any branch, any job type, anything like that?
Right. So I got into it really actually from my tax advisor who said you should start a nonprofit. It'd help, you know, with some of your tax burden.
Right.
And I'm all about being helped with my tax burden.
Right. Yeah.
So then the next thing is, well, what do you do with the nonprofit? And it was easy for me. I know claims all my life. I've been an adjuster for 36 years, degree in insurance. And this is what I know. So that part of it, I knew, okay, it's going to have something to do with insurance and claims adjusting and really focusing on how to get into the business or how to succeed in the business. And then it was just, well, now who am I going to cater to?
Right.
And that was, again, very easy. Veterans in my family. I already had a veteran on my team. I had a retired police officer. I had a retired firefighter. Veterans and first responders is who I'm going to help, and which good thing, and they're most deserving.
Yeah.
So that was it.
So I really want to get your perspective on a couple things. I want to clarify one thing first, too, real quick. So you say you have your degree in claims. You have an AIC?
No, I actually have a Bachelor of Science degree in insurance.
No kidding.
Yes, sir.
I didn't know you could even do that.
Most people don't.
You're one of one that I
Right.
know of.
I know.
There's a lot of people with an associate in claims. It is an actual degree plan, and it's
know that.
specific to claim handling. You see it a lot on the carrier side. Last few years, you've started to see more public adjusters get into it on our side, and it's an additional credential to validate you as as an adjuster. I guess given your tenure in this industry, I'm not surprised that you have a bachelor in that. So it's kind of a cool thing, but does that work? Do you put that credential like on your signature block and all that, or do you not?
No. You know, I started out on the insurance company side, like so many do. But my father was an agent, and his advice to me after I got my degree was as soon as you can, you're going to have to start in claims. They're not going to let you just become an agent right off the bat. But as soon as you can, get into agency and become an agent. And so that's what I went to do. Started on with a very big red insurance company, and spent a little while there in claims. In claims there, they wanted you to go into agents' offices as part of their internal PR. They wanted good communication between claims and agency. And just in doing that, I learned pretty quickly I did not want to be an agent.
Right.
It was not in my blood, and I liked claims. So good enough, I stayed in claims rather than going to agency, and I stayed there for 17 years before I finally saw the light and crossed over.
And I think that happens to a lot of folks. A lot of the people that are on our side, on the public adjuster side, they either started as contractors and got tired of arguing to get their bills paid, or they were prior carrier adjusters who either got tired of having their hands tied, got tired of submitting what they considered real good evidence to pay for something, and then seeing that person was not indemnified or whatever, right? There's a hand, or the pay structure. They realize that the PA side, they can make a lot more money, given the right circumstances, obviously. So, and it's funny that you said that, because it's a completely different path for a lot of service members getting out. When you go to these career fairs, one of the first places that show up is that company. And they're like, take our personality assessment, and you can have your own office and your own firm, and everything's tax write-offable. You get a little brick building with a red sign out front. It'll be great. And then none of us pass the personality assessment, right? Because we're all somewhat damaged, right? But it's interesting to hear that you can also go that route. I always wondered how you ended up being an agent without just applying to be an agent. I never thought of the idea that there was an alternative end goal to becoming an agent as a pass-through to get to something else.
Yeah, back then, but this is in the 80s. Back then, you did not just become an agent because you wanted to be an agent.
I got you.
You had to go through claims. You could go through underwriting. You had to be an employee first before you got to be an agent.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, though, because how many times have you run a claim for, Betty Sue down the street, and she's like, well, my agent said that would make sense that in the 80s, 90s, that was a thing. And that's why so many of the older generation would be like, well, my agent said this. Let me call my agent before I file a claim. And nowadays, your agent doesn't know, because most of these guys never had to deal with claims. They just bought an agency. They signed up. They took the personality test. They checked all the boxes, and then they got their own agency. So a lot of times now, your agent, the guy who sold you your insurance, doesn't know the first thing about a claim. That actually makes that's some new insight for me right there, Mark. I tell you what.
Not to say it wasn't true back then too. There were a lot of agents back then who did not know a lot about claims, and I specifically remember one saying, "Wait a minute, I've been doing this for 25 years. You mean to tell me I've been doing it wrong all this time?"
Oh no.
Yes, that's what I'm having to tell you.
I wish I was having on a Zoom call earlier today, and one of the people on the Zoom said, if you could go back in time and tell your 25-year-old self something, what would it be? I wish somebody would say stuff like that. Your longevity in a career field does not indicate your expertise.
True.
Right. And I think that mentality is used a lot. It's I've been doing this for 20 years. I know what I'm doing. And especially in the insurance industry and the insurance and construction side, means and methods on the construction side have changed. The insurance side has changed. The way policies are written has changed, and they change every year. They change by state. There are so many variables in that. You can't rely on tenure to determine somebody's expertise in our field. It's the craziest thing.
It has a lot to do with it, whether you're the type of person who's like, well, this is the way we've always done it, or,
the most dangerous saying in the world.
I hate that saying. It makes me cringe.
Yeah, and I used to tell my guys like that all the time when I was in. It was like, whenever I would go to a new unit or something, they would go, well, this is the way so-and-so did it. I'm like, I don't care. We're going to do it differently. If we stay doing it the same way, we're never growing. And you have to find people who want to grow, and they want to constantly be educating themselves. And, when you can find that, you can set the people up for success. So, Mark, I want to talk a little bit more about the nonprofit when we get back after this break. I'm Daniel Rabowski. You're listening to Boots to Business, and we'll see you guys here in just a few minutes.
We now return to Boots to Business with Daniel Rabowski.
And welcome back to Boots to Business, everybody. I am Daniel Rabowski. This part of today's show brought to you by Shield Tech Roofing Solutions, your premier destination for commercial roofing excellence when it comes to protecting your commercial property. Trust in our top-tier roofing systems, or top-tier roofing coatings and expert repair services. Our commitment to you is unparalleled customer service and roofing expertise to ensure your satisfaction. Explore their specialized roofing solutions at shieldtechroofing.com. So, in studio, Melissa Jacob from Striking
Hello.
Brand, Mark Goldwich, Gold Star Adjusters.
Yes, sir.
And in the last section or portion of the show, we were kind of getting a little bit of backstory on who Mark is. And he's obviously been in this industry for, what'd you say, 36 years?
Yes, sir.
Got into the nonprofit space and found that the ideal candidate for his plan would be veterans and first responders, which I think is great. What do you see? Are you seeing an influx of people over the last few years? Because there was a big change about 2012 when we did the shutdown in Iraq. And then 2017, 2018, we did the pullout of Afghanistan. There's obviously when the country's not at war, we will always see an influx of exiting service members, right? It's the nature of the beast, right? We get fat and happy when the country's at war, and then when war is over, essentially, then a lot of those guys get out. So do you see, how are people finding you? Because, I mean, ideally what would happen here is that we push some of your information out. People see some clips. People, say, oh, I know a veteran who might want to get into this space. Let me reach out to Mark. Like, how are people finding you now?
It's all different ways, but a lot of it is social media. So a lot of it is Facebook. They'll see me in a conversation or in a group, certain claims group, and they may be an independent adjuster, or they might be a roofing contractor or a roof salesman, and they like how I communicate on there, and they do a little check, and maybe they see a post where a lot of times I'll piggyback on somebody doing training. Yeah. And I'll put a reminder out there. If you're interested, if you're a veteran or first responder interested in training like this, my nonprofit, and I put the site for the nonprofit for them to click onto so that they can go check out the nonprofit, let them know that we can help you with, some of the expenses involved. And then I personally know of different ways that you can get in for, if you're a veteran, that you can get into, whether it's a claims boot camp or Xactimate training. If you know the right people and you know that they're willing to open a chair for a veteran, that helps.
And that's a big thing in our industry right now. And there's a lot of push for the inclusivity portion of it, right? Because, and you and I have talked about this a couple other times on the show, where you don't really ever know what version of a veteran you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to get the competent, structured version, or you're going to get the chaotic, out of control version. And we've talked about in the past here the complex that a lot of Americans have. It's either you're a hero or you're a monster, right? And so you don't know which one of these folks you're going to get. And some of us have lived in both of those spaces, right? So you ask, I am the villain to somebody, right? I am somebody's biggest antagonist. I know that. Wasn't intentional, right? But to somebody, I'm the monster, right? And then to some folks, I'm that heroic person. I'm the person that they know they can be confide in. They have confidence that I'm going to be competent for them on their behalf. So how do you vet that?
That's tough, but it's like anybody else, really. You have to have some conversations with them,
right? And
just see how they are and how they act, and some will outright tell you, look, I've got PTSD, I've got problems dealing with this, or I've got problems dealing with that,
right?
And you just, you talk to them, you help, and for me, I'm just helping them the best I can.
Right.
A lot of times they're not coming to work for me. They're just coming into the industry. So I'm just helping them get to a training class or connect them with an Xactimate expert, something like that. I'm just giving them the best chance that I can, knowing what I know, who I know, and then there's obviously there's a financial component to them.
Right.
I can help them. They get a seat to that class in Galveston, but how are they going to get there? How are they going to pay for the hotel and
Oh,
the food?
okay. So that's where your
that's-
nonprofit is.
Right. That's
Yeah.
what
So
I do. But I can help connect them with the seat that I know I can get them for free, so that they don't have to spend $2,000 for this training. And that's not from me. That's from him, but I know him, and then I get them to the event or help them get to the event, help them with other expenses that are involved.
So your nonprofit helps veterans and first responders if they want to transition into this field. You help like fund their education and things like that.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Anything to help them transition and be successful. So even afterwards, so maybe they've gone to the training, they've got their license, they're connected with a PA firm, but maybe they just need some kind of support along the way.
Right.
You know, I can do that either again with resources or with financial.
Well, and so I think it's an important to note here, Melissa. So the barrier of entry for us, with the exception of Florida, is super low. Right? You could go in tomorrow if you didn't live in Florida. Let's say you lived in Texas. I could go with you to the Pearson View testing facility. You could walk in and just click ABCD all the way down the thing. And if you happen to score a 71, congratulations, you're a public adjuster.
Oh, wow.
Right? So the barrier of entry for us is super low. So what Mark does is say, okay, the license part's easy, right? It's the training. And like, I know if I get called by a company to come out and do training, they're spending thousands, right? This isn't like if somebody wants to show up, it's a $200 ticket. Like a lot of times these are $1,000 to $5,000 plus travel, plus this, plus, you know, and so by the time you add all that in, if you have a service member who's lived off of $35,000 a year is adult life, and then now he's out of the service, maybe no disability, or he's working on his disability claim, and you're talking a year before. I mean, look, I just got, and I don't care to say it publicly, I just got 100% disability after 12 years of fighting with the VA.
Wow.
So there are guys, your first year to 2 years out, you're not getting anything from the VA. You might get a little bit, but it's not enough to live on. So you have to find a skill. So why wouldn't you find something that has a low barrier of entry, right? And then say, I can figure it out on the fly, because that's the military mentality. That's the way we do everything.
Right.
Be like, hey, we're going to go to this country. We're going to do dumb things, and we're going to figure it out once we get there, right? Because we don't have any idea what it is or what the actual landscape looks like, or any of these things. So it's hard for a lot of these guys to get out there and do those things. And so that's what the goal of what Mark's doing is, to say, okay, we have all these resources, and we have the financial bandwidth to be able to supply you with the ability to get there, with no expectation or obligation for employment at that point. Right. And that's I think that's important, because, and I think that's something I'm going to save for the next segment, because I think it's going to take me a little bit longer to get through it. But I think that the way he's doing it is 100% right, because you do run into potential pitfalls if the expectation, leaving the availability for free training or advocacy, leads to me hiring you as a person. I think you kind of open yourself up to potential liability there. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think I would. But again, I'm just helping them. And a lot of times they'll call with a claim question, instead of going on Facebook and putting it out there.
And getting berated by
can you just
everybody in
walk
those
me-
groups.
Right. And who wants to do that? Be publicly berated.
Oh, and
So
our industry is so bad.
Is it really?
Oh,
it's tough. It's ugly.
Yeah.
So I'll just walk them through it, and sometimes it's go out and do this first. When you get that answer, come back to me, and I'll let you know the next step. Because a lot of times there's no clear-cut path.
Right.
It's a lot of hurdles, and you got to find a way around whatever hurdle they put in front of you.
Yeah, and no two claims are the same. No two policies are the same. There's general policy language, and there's general claim handling stuff, but you have to get into some of those nuances to be able to really understand what they look like. And having resources that you can very openly call and have conversations with is huge, because our industry, like we were just saying, is so bad. Somebody will pop in there and be like, hey, I know I'm new, but what is coverage A in the policy? And then all these people are like, how dare you not know what coverage A is? And they just belittle this person to the point that they're never going to ask another question.
Right.
So, but we'll talk about that a little bit more here when we get back from the break. This is Boots to Business. I'm Daniel Rabowski. We'll see y'all here in just a few minutes.
We now return to Boots to Business with Daniel Rabowski.
And welcome back to Boots to Business, everybody. My name is Daniel Rabowski. This portion of today's show, which is our third portion, meaning we're halfway through today,
Already.
is brought to you by my tongue twister, Golden Temple Builders. Had to say it slow so I don't mess it up. Bringing you decades of expertise in commercial renovations and remodels. Their commitment to you is clear written pricing options tailored specifically for your project. Visit them at goldenTempleBuilders.com or call them at 321-508-0815. In studio, Melissa Jacob from Striking Brand.
Hello, hello.
Mark Goldwich from Gold Star Adjusters.
Hey there.
And before the break, we were talking about a lot about Mark's nonprofit and what that looks like and what that actually offers people. And I wanted to touch on something, but I realized that we didn't have time in the last segment. So I'm going to give you an example of why I think that the way that Mark's doing it is right. He's providing a resource, but with no expectation of being hired. I love the veteran community.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I truly do.
Uh-oh.
There are basket cases in my community just like there is everywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
And when there is an expectation of employment and understood or misunderstood, right, and it doesn't work out, the veteran community is really quick to make a really, really big deal out of it. So much so that I recently, probably in the last year, I was working at a PA firm, and we had a disabled vet that wanted to apply for a job. And they sent me his resume because I'm a veteran, and they're like, hey, you know, what's going on here? So I started reading through it, and there was things on there like can't climb a ladder, can't be indoors for too long, and like around pet dander, and like all these things that are had nothing to do with being a veteran, right? Like you got allergies to cats, cool. And it was like, I can't be in a house for more than 30 minutes, can't climb a roof, can't do this, can't be outside in the sun, can't breathe too hard on Tuesdays. Like there was this long list of things. And I said, and I told everybody in there, I said, do not call this person. Do not call them. Do not email them. Do not respond to this solicitation. And they said, why? And I said, because I have seen this happen before. We're opening ourselves up for a liability and a potential lawsuit for discrimination. If we don't engage it, if we never even have a conversation with this person, we've vetted their resume, determined that they don't have the required skills to do this job. We don't need to have a conversation with them. It happened to me when I worked for the Army Corps of Engineers. We had a guy come in, disabled vet. He couldn't stand for more than 30 minutes. Couldn't work night shift, couldn't work day shift because of the sun. There was like all this huge list of things. And so the Corps said, no, we're not hiring you. And he sued the Corps of Engineers and got a job. And then they had to go around and facilitate a bunch of things for this dude to do the job. And while I can appreciate that there are disabled vets out there who have physical incapacities, I struggle sometimes, and this is just my thing, and I'll probably get some hate for this, and it is what it is. I struggle sometimes with the idea that the world has to accommodate you, right?
I agree.
I think there's a reasonable expectation. If my leg was blown off, yeah, you should accommodate. Make sure there's a ramp for my wheelchair, right? Just things like that. But if you're saying, I want to enter the workforce, then you have to also somewhat adhere to the workforce. Right. And I think sometimes things kind of get taken out of context. And why would you apply? And I can't wrap my head around it, right? Like, I'm not going to apply to be a window washer on sky rises if I'm afraid of heights.
Exactly.
Right. But then I'm also not going to shame you for owning a window washing company that didn't hire me because I'm afraid of heights. Like the idea there just blows my mind.
Yeah. That's like saying you need to now I want to be a window washer. I'm afraid of heights. So now you have to create some VR experience for me so that I feel like I'm on the ground.
Right.
Like it's insane.
Or I can only do the first floor. Right. I can only do the first floor. Like, well, there's 87 floors in this building. Yeah. Listen,
get someone else for the rest.
Yeah. And it's crazy.
Why would you do
so you're
that?
expecting a company to now incur additional costs to facilitate whatever you have going on. I'm not saying, just full disclaimer, I'm not saying that people that have these incapacities shouldn't enter the workforce. All I'm saying is if you don't fit the mold for a job, don't then go after the company that you don't fit the mold
There's
of.
a more appropriate position somewhere.
Yeah. And now I just saw yesterday a post from a public adjuster advertising if you would like to work in office remotely, give me a call. I may have a position for you.
Yeah, cool.
So for that company or that
person,
that might work.
Yeah, and there are avenues for it. What I didn't want to have happen because we didn't do desk adjusters, right? So, and there are some companies that do that. They have guys that only go out and do inspections and guys that only go out and do certain other things behind the desk. We didn't offer that. I didn't even want to entertain that conversation because I didn't want to open us up to a potential lawsuit. And then the dude waited like 6 months and then applied again. And I got his resume again and I said, this is the same guy. Stop it. Like, so it's crazy to me sometimes people's expectations, and the veteran community is special in this circumstance because we're treated differently. I don't care who you are. I don't care how you want to look at it. We are treated differently. We are treated with a certain level of eyes on. And for anybody in the military, you get that saying. There's a focus, right? If somebody walks in the room and they say, hey, I'm a veteran, I'm applying for this job, they're at least focusing on the fact that you're a veteran, right? Outside of that, you still have to exemplify certain skills. You still have to make sure that they understand that you can perform the job that you're applying for. I just hate the idea of holding people accountable. So you're taking somebody who's got a business that they've blood, sweat, and tears themselves to grow, and then you're going to rub their name in the dirt because they wouldn't hire you for a job that you weren't capable of doing in the first place. It's crazy.
That is crazy.
So and that's why I asked very specifically in the beginning of like, well, what's the expectation? You're not employing them, or they are, or they're not. And I think that the way you're doing it is fantastic. It's an opportunity for people to have the availability for resources, and you're pretty well connected in the industry, and you have a good reputation, and people know. And he's very active in social media when it comes to, especially a lot of the forums and the groups. And he's always putting good information out there, and people see it, and the people are reacting to it, whether they agree or disagree. Our industry thrives on conflict and disagreement. Right. So even if I don't agree with Mark and I voice it online, it's opening the door to more people and their opinions and different avenues that you can look at how to solve this problem. So I think that it's great the way you're doing it, but I'm always so very risk adverse. I'm always looking at like, where's the liability at? Right.
And I kind of don't. I kind of am a little naive still in that I just think everything's going to be okay. And so I would have taken that veteran, and I still would throw him my way. I'll find him someone who will do a desk adjuster. In my firm, we don't do that either.
Right.
But somebody might, and I'll take the time with him and see if I can't find somebody that would do that. And then obviously yesterday, just found that, and it's funny. It got to me because somebody sent this post exchange to me because one of the people who responded to this desk adjuster request was somebody that was an adjuster of mine. I brought them on, and they didn't live in the same city, so they were kind of remote, and they went about a year and never handled a claim, and then just dropped off. And so I almost wanted to say, you may not want to bring that person on, but that's up to them. And
I've learned over the years too that my experience with people doesn't dictate your experience with people, right? And I've had to get out of my own way in some of that because I used to be very, very like, ask me about Steve. I'll tell you all about Steve. I don't like Steve. Steve's a big old piece of crap. Like I used to be that person, and I've gotten away from it. And I'm a lot more calculated now. Not to say that I don't do that exclusively anymore, because there are instances, but I've had to learn, especially in this industry, because if you see what people post online and things like that, and a lot of times people's reputations precede them in our industry, and if you make that decision and you have that predisposition, I have found myself being wrong a lot. And so now I'm very much like, you know what, I'm going to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. And I've had conversations with people. I've had guests on this show that I've gotten calls afterwards, and they're like, hey, you had so-and-so on the show? I'm like, yeah. They're like, are you sure? I'm like, clearly I am, because they were already here, you know? But I can appreciate though, the optimism in what you're doing, right? And saying, you know what, let's open that door for some of these folks. And I think that you have to have that. And when you lose it, you end up being somebody like me, very disgruntled and very black and white.
Cynical.
Cynical. That's a really good word. So when we get back, Mark, I want to spend some time talking about whatever it is that you want to really drive home in the last segment. This is Boots to Business. My name's Daniel Rabowski. We'll see y'all in a few minutes.
We now return to Boots to Business with Daniel Rabowski.
All right, everybody, welcome to the last segment of our show. This is Boots to Business. My name is Daniel Rabowski, and this portion of today's show is brought to you by Coastal Claim Services, your trusted partner in public insurance adjusting. Headquartered here in Florida, serving clients nationwide, they specialize in first-party insurance claims, whether it's residential or commercial. And when it comes to protecting your home or business and ensuring that you receive a fair insurance settlement, count on their expertise and their specialized team of public adjusters. Explore their comprehensive services today at coastalclaims.net. In studio, Melissa Jacob.
Hello, hello.
Mark Goldwich.
Hey there.
This is our last segment, so
Alrighty.
we're going to drive some points home. That's what we're gonna do. We spent the first 3 parts of the show talking primarily about the nonprofit. I think I want to point out very specifically that Mark, first and foremost, is a public adjuster, and he's a well-respected public adjuster in our industry. Has his own PA firm. Now, do you guys work you're out of Jacksonville. Do you guys work just in Florida, or you guys work nationwide as well?
Now, we're mainly in Florida.
Okay.
We have some adjusters that are licensed in other states, but for the most part, it's just Florida.
So that's kind of the interesting thing about being a PA, right? So Florida is its own country, and then the rest of the country does.
Why is that?
The laws are different, and Florida set up their laws the way that they do. I think it's one of 2 states left that actually require apprenticeships, which is awful. But you do have to apprentice under a licensed PA for a period of time, and so on and so forth. So what we see is a lot of times Florida-specific public adjusters will only work Florida claims because there's an abundance of them,
Right.
because it's hard to get your license here. And then we'll hold licenses in other states because a lot of times you don't have to physically go to a property. If you get the right data from a contractor, you get the right data from whoever's soliciting you, you can work an entire claim having never gone. I mean, I've worked claims in Iowa, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Michigan,
Wow.
and I've never set foot on those properties. And
I've done that remotely just in Florida, where I didn't go to the property in Florida.
yeah, I mean, and it's crazy because coming from Texas before we lived here, and, it's like everybody's like, oh, Daytona's 20 minutes from Port Orange. I don't want to go. And I'm like, 20 minutes? Like, and then it would be like, oh, we have to go to Naples. I'm like, how far is it from Naples? They're like 2.5 hours. I'm like, 2. So it's going from one side of Dallas to the other side of Fort Worth. Like the idea of the travel here, everybody's like, ooh, 2 hours. I can't do it.
Yeah.
But even with that being said, you get a lot of calls from Naples, and especially after this last hurricane, you get a lot of the, Lord, I'm drawing a blank, the Captiva, Fort Myers area, where you get claims that if somebody sends you the right info, you don't have to go live in the hurricane zone if you don't want to,
Yeah.
right? And so Mark's tenure in this, I know we kind of joked about it earlier about how it doesn't necessarily, it's not indicative of expertise, but he's figured it out, being that he's here in Florida. He's moved on to the policy holder side, and he's effective in what he does. And I think that it's always important to shine light on people who are effective and have good reputations and aren't slimy in our industry, because there are so many people who truly do not have other people's best interest in mind. It's all very self-serving. So combine your PA firm with your nonprofit, and I think that's phenomenal. So what do you see? What are the issues that you see running the nonprofit? What do you see when you are dealing with these veterans? What do you see when it comes to trying to get them? Because a lot of these guys, I would assume, just out of my own experience, the struggle is to nudge them into going, right? Like, hey, go to this class. This is a good class. Like, what are you seeing, and what are the struggles that you have? And maybe we can push some people in the social media world to help.
Yeah, it's mainly twofold. Getting the information out there. You have to constantly be putting that information in a lot of different places at the same time for the eyeballs to see it. Because if they don't see it this minute, it's gone the next minute.
Yeah.
So you have to put it out there a lot. And then there is a mentality that veterans don't want to accept help. It's hard to get them to accept help. And I have them telling me that on a very regular basis. I heard about you a while back. I hesitated to get in touch with you because, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm a Marine and I didn't want to ask for help.
Yeah. Well, it's we're so ingrained with you just need to figure it out, right? And especially men. And I'm not trying to cause a rift here, but men's mental health is a big thing right now. It's very much in the forefront of people. So you take a bunch of combat vets, and I say combat specifically because up until the last couple of years, women were not allowed in combat jobs, but they were still exposed to combat. And a lot of the resources that were there for the female community in the service kind of became dual purpose, right? A lot of the what's it called? There's a whole platform, and I'm drawing a blank of what it is, but it helps women with like sexual assault and all this stuff. All they did was make that added to the platform that already existed to help with the combat trauma and PTSD for female soldiers that didn't exist for men. And even if it did, try convince a Marine or an infantryman in the Army to go tell somebody that he was sexually assaulted. These guys aren't going to do it.
Right.
The statistics and the ethos that exists there does not allow them mentally to do that. So that does not go away when you get out of service. This is now something that you're like, well, no, I just need to figure it out, which is why a lot of the guys, that's why the homeless thing is such a big thing, because these guys, in lieu of asking for help, will live in a box. You know?
I've got an intern that's working with me right now through SkillBridge, a program.
SkillBridge is so good.
Right. And he just told me earlier this week that they're kind of trained that if what they're receiving from somebody else is more than $25, they're just turned off to it. They think there's something wrong with it, and they shy away from it.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, there's so many grants out there. There's so many nonprofits out there that are designed to help veterans. I mean, hell, we did RoofCon, and there was a nonprofit that was there that their whole purpose does in the motorcycle community, and there are nonprofits that give motorcycles to veterans. So you got a guy who won't take $25, try to give him a $20,000 bike,
right?
You know, and those things exist. Or the guys who have missing limbs and they're, you know, now all of a sudden they need a specialized van and they need ramps built in their homes and all these things, and try to get somebody who has been so selfless and so self-sufficient in the same breath for years to now say, hey man, I need you to accept this help. Right?
Yeah. And then there's the number of programs and the number of nonprofits. It's just mind-boggling. There's so many out there. There's more than they could ever get through.
Yeah. You just Google anything and then add the word for veterans at the end of it. Done.
You got it.
Pages and pages of, and I can appreciate that people want to do those things, right? I think that it's admirable for sure. But there's so many, like Mark said, that you kind of get lost in the soup a little bit. So what are you seeing? Like, how do we get past that? Is it just more advertising? Is it, for me, my answer to 99% of problems is always education, right? Teach people that these things exist, and then let them make the decision. If you know how to fish and you don't ever go fishing, that's on you, right?
Right. It's just plugging away. You know, it's driving 2 hours each way to do an episode like this, right? It's going to another nonprofit that also works somewhat with the veteran community and reaching out to them, leaving cards behind with them. It's just dropping a little tidbit here, there, and everywhere that you possibly can, so that somewhere a veteran's eye is going to fall on it, or a friend, spouse, whatever it is, somebody's going to see it, and you can help that one person. And, you know, it's just one at a time.
So as we're kind of running out of the back end of our last segment, how do people reach you? Where do they go to find out information about the nonprofit? What do you want to say to anybody? And then I'll kind of follow in behind with some stuff on my end.
All right. Well, it's easy enough. The website is veteransclaimvictory.org.
Claim one word, not singular, not
singular,
plural.
yeah.
Okay.
Veterans Claim Victory.
Claimvictory.org.
Okay. And then email service@veteransclaimvictory.org, and that's right to me.
Okay.
And it really is pretty much just me, right?
Okay.
That's the whole organization.
Perfect.
We'll help them out.
Anybody listening, and we'll probably do a reel specifically for this, but anybody listening, if you know a veteran that's getting ready to get out of the service and they are looking for a job, veterans will do a lot of different jobs. Point them in Mark's direction. Follow the website. Shoot him an email. Let's get people. It doesn't matter where you're at in the country, and we'll try to help some veterans out. So, Mark, I appreciate you coming in. Melissa, as always.
Of course.
And as we're wrapping up today, I got to shoot out a couple shout outs to some other sponsors. We have Apex Performance Chiropractic, Claim Wizard CRM, and the Z Goalkeeper Academy. Big shout out to Rick. Hopefully you get better. This has been Boots to Business. My name is Daniel Rabowski. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next week.